all that was false.
Like lies made up or what?
No, people were not lying. They just didn't remember exactly what happened. And what they did remember seemed absurd because there were only bits and pieces of memory that
Ah,
were put together.
got you.
So the fact is, though, that when we began to use systematic and controlled hypnosis, we began to get these patterns. And Bud Hopkins was the first one really to understand patterns. He wrote a book in 1981 called Missing Time, which took 7 abductees and showed there were patterns here, just like with UFOs. You could put it all together. All of them were undergoing the same kind of events that were happening, and it was sort of amazing what he did. It was almost like a revelation. He opened up a window into what this world was. Uh, then in the early 80s, he called me up and he said, David, he said, I found the most amazing case I ever had. It was just absolutely amazing, absolutely astounding. I've never had a case like this. It's just amazing. I was really excited how amazing it was, how incredible it was, And I said, my God, well, what happened? He said, well, there was this woman, they took her into a room and there were a whole bunch of weird looking babies there. And they had her take this baby, looks sort of half human and half alien, and she had to hold the baby. And I was so astounded at this. I had never used the word baby and aliens or UFOs together in the same sentence. Never in my life. What do you mean, babies?
Hmm.
And he said, yeah, that's what happened. He says, they had her put the baby to her breast and feed the baby. I said, feed the baby? What are you talking about? You can't feed the baby on call like that just because somebody wants you to. I said, did she explain to them that she wasn't pregnant, that she wasn't lactating? You can't just feed a baby. And he said, yes, she said that. She said she couldn't feed the baby. It's not possible. But they forced her to put the baby up to her breast anyway and feed the baby. I mean, pretend to feed the baby or whatever it was. And I thought
Yeah.
to myself, if this is true, if this is actually happening, and I don't know yet because we have to have a lot more cases like this, then this would mean that their ability to think is very different than our ability to think, because they value form over function. In other words, they force her to put the baby to her breast. That would be the form, but there's no function. There's no milk in her breast, so she can't feed the baby.
Yeah.
So the value is form over function makes no sense. Well, what we've learned, of course, is we have hundreds and hundreds of these cases now. The woman is already lactating, whether she knows it or not, and the lactation has been stimulated by other procedures that happened beforehand, and there is milk. And everything that we've learned about this subject seemed crazy or inconceivably illogical in the beginning turns out to be very uncrazy, very logical, very sane, etc. So Hopkins began to discover this reproductive program of creating these babies. From the beginning, people were describing reproductive events. Barney Hill in 1961 described what he thought sperm was being taken from him. Betty Hill said that a, quote, pregnancy test was administered to her through a needle in the navel. That almost certainly was not what happened. In other words, she recalled it wrong. They did not say that. It is inconceivable that they would have said that to her, but that's what she thought they'd said. But she's indicating that they were doing something reproductively. And we began to get that very steadily. As early as 1972, one woman theorized that they were very interested in our reproductive capabilities. They're not interested in our reproductive capabilities, it turns out, but they are interested in reproduction. And so people began to describe these babies. And I began to get these same kinds of accounts, and Bud got more, and we began to get them, and they became sort of routine. And every once in a while, people would see them as not babies, but as 3, 4, 5 years old, toddlers, as they say.
Right.
And then they would see them as younger children, 10, 11 years old. They'd see them as adolescents. They'd see them as young, and then pretty soon they were talking about them as young adults. And people would see them as regular adults, older adults, but not very old adults. not past the age of 50 for some reason or another. And that still seems to be the case, and we do not know why. Or at least past the age of 60. We don't see older adults. Now, we call them hybrids. Some Buddhists first called them hybrids, and that name is stuck. Other people in Buddhists tried to call them transgenic beings. That's another name for hybrid. I go with the shortest one, hybrid, is the easiest one to say. And what I began to discover was, over the years, an increased involvement with adult hybrids and even younger adolescent hybrids in the abduction procedures themselves. Sometimes instead of gray aliens coming down to abduct people, hybrid would come down and abduct somebody. Sometimes in doing procedures with people on a table, there'd be hybrids who might do some of the procedures. Always with gray aliens. As time went on, people began to describe abduction events that are being done with gray aliens much less in evidence, much less around. And then eventually abductions with only hybrids, no gray aliens at all. Now, this is not everybody, and it's not every time, but you could see that this was happening.
That's the pattern. It's changing.
Right, the pattern was changing, at least for some people. Not for everybody, but for some people. And in the 80s, I had heard nothing like this at all. And so what I began to see was a greater involvement in the whole abduction phenomenon of hybrids, and still obviously controlled by gray aliens and all that. Then I realized that some people knew hybrids from the time that they were children, and I wrote about this in the thread. That I called them personal project hybrids. These were hybrids who took on a young human girl, or usually male hybrids, as a project, and they stayed with them, I didn't know how long, but it turns out forever, throughout the course of their lives, from what I can tell. And so there was this. I had no idea what this was all about, but these hybrids would visit them and talk with them and this and that, and it was this whole world of hybrids. And it was also at this time that I discovered that there was a strong neurological component to this. Abductees all described being stared at by aliens and sometimes by hybrids. And when I first heard this, I would say, well, what do you mean by stared at? They're looking, obviously they're staring at you. They're looking at you, No, he's looking real closely at me. And I'd say, well, where is he looking? Is he looking at your knees? Is he looking at your stomach? If you're lying on a table, for example, no, he's looking at my head. I say, well, is he looking at your ears? Is he looking at your chin, your nose? What's he looking at? Oh, he's looking at my eyes. He's looking in my eyes. I say, well, how close is he to you? I say, well, his forehead is touching mine, or he's an inch away, or something like that. And I have maybe 600 accounts of this, maybe more, 800. All of this is, it's just the craziest thing to say in the first place,
Yeah.
And that's when I began to figure out that the question ultimately that I stumbled on. When they say that, there's no way you can know what the next question should be.
Right.
So I stumbled on the question, and the question was not how long does this go on, or what's he doing with his hands when that's going on, or can you? I asked the questions. Can you close your eyes? No. I asked your question. Can you turn your eyes away? No. The question that I literally just guessed was, what's going on in your mind while he's doing this? What are you thinking about? And then I opened up this world of neurological manipulation that goes on with the abduction phenomenon. In other words, people would say, he's looking at something, he's looking at my memories. It's like memories of what I've done in the last month are flashing through my mind